Much. Welcome to this part 4, Bridging Skills. A double welcome to many of you whose repeat names we see on the sign-in sheets we read after the previous webinars. We've titled this part of the series, Bridging Skills. Sarah Blackstone, the competent researcher in AAC, writes, "The first principle of AAC research and practice requires the active participation of individuals with complex communication needs in all AAC activities. Our focus is for increased participation every step of the way." Bridge is both a noun, a structure you can count on holding you up as you go over the deeper waters, and a verb, way of moving from one place to another. Lesley and I see AAC users using bridges as they move toward independence in using AAC and full participation with communication partners. Participation moves AAC users to improved quality of life as they contribute to others. Please know that you will receive a follow-up email after today's session where you will find several links that will enable you to download a link to the presentation slides and get your certificate of attendance. Independence, of course, too. In the following email, you'll also find links to the new video demos of the featured assistive technology as well as additional downloads. If you'd like to share a recording of today's session or any of the 3 previous sessions Lesley and I have done, it'd be available through a link on the AbleNet University webpage. Although technical difficulties are not the norm, I do share with you the following tips in order to ensure a good operational webinar experience. In addition to maximizing your screen by clicking on the link to the upper right-hand corner, please close any other applications that you're running that use bandwidth. If you hear an echo, you'll probably logged in more than once. To remedy this situation, please close out one of your connections. If you experience the audio cutting in and out, you may have an unstable connection, usually from a wireless connection. Try clicking Mute Audio, wait several seconds, then click Play Audio to establish the audio broadcast. Should you experience difficulty, please contact ReadyTalk, as unfortunately I cannot address such concerns now that the webinar has started. Bridging skills is not done in one day or with one AAC specialist. Lesley has a remarkable gift of understanding augmentative and alternative communication principles.
Thanks to Dr. Sharon Rogers.
And then bridging the principles to practice as she participates in activities with children with complex communication needs. When I retired, she thankfully became that authentic bridge to many of the children I had as students. Lesley bridges knowledge of AAC to seniors like myself and to preschoolers. She bridges a full academic and teaching career with parenting 2 middle school sons and a dynamic husband. I see Lesley in individual education program meetings, building bridges between educators, parents, paraprofessionals, administrators to make sure that the children get moving using AAC in school and real-world settings.
Well, that was very nice. And here is Dr. Sharon Rogers. She is passionate for AAC. Her AAC she's just contagious. You could have absolutely no idea what AAC is about, but if you spend any time at all with Dr. Sharon Rogers, you will be hooked. In my first few months as a student SLP, I watched in awe, really, as she made connections with kids with cerebral palsy using unaided and aided communication. She took them outside of the class to generate novel communication, which is really exciting. I hadn't seen anybody do that. Just, okay, we're going outside. She brought, one time, although we were inside on this occasion, she brought in a container of live ladybugs to connect the kids to their science curriculum, and they sort of got away from us. Note to self, do this activity outside. She would also bring in salsa recipes with the kids and use environmental control switches with a blender. And she brought and continues to bring activity and communication to life. I won't tell you how long ago we started working together. We'll just keep moving right on through that. But it's just been a fantastic adventure. So here we are at part 4 of Bridging Skills, June 4th. If you are all out for the summer, congratulations. We're over here in California. We still have a few weeks to go with some of our schools. Some are getting out now, so congratulations on either making it to the finish line or nearing that finish line. So where we started on April was just getting started. Where are we at with this child's communication, and what can we do to help elicit participation? Then we moved on to building fundamentals, which was taking where the child was at and moving them forward. If we had one word or one way of communication, what could we do to move children towards 2 to 4 ways of modes of communication? Then we moved into making connections, which is the child's ability to successfully communicate, probably with a fair amount of support, but still growing and starting to put some pieces together for their communication. Then we started talking about bridging skills, and here we are, moving towards independence with participation, probably looking at degrees of great success in certain contexts, like structured playtimes, maybe certain academic settings, and where less adult support is required, but still maybe in other settings requiring some degrees. But they're starting to get the idea that they're going to take on some of this communication responsibility. And then we hope to see you or hear, or you're listening to us, I guess, June 25th with maximizing participation. And there we're really starting to look for independence. The child knows they have interaction skills that will work for them. And while, of course, we're still growing and working with the child, and learning is still occurring, we're really helping them thrive as more independent communicators. Now, if you've joined us in the previous sessions, you know that we're big believers in Janice Light's work with the 4 purposes of communication, the work she had done in 1988 and 89. And what you see here is this comes from her work towards the definition of communicative competence for individuals using AAC. What a powerful title that is. It is so important. So what do we need to do? We can look at these 4 purposes: social closeness for relationships, the information transfer of ideas and meanings, social etiquette, and wants and needs. There's that tendency to put too much emphasis on the wants and needs. We really want to build and bridge these skills for these kids to effectively use their body and posturing and nonverbal skills for expressions of messages that can be verbal and nonverbal. That transfer of ideas socially could be, hey, I'm ready to play, or I want to tell you about what I learned in science, or this is what I know from what I read in that story. So we're really looking at information, social, and then etiquette as well, ways to help a child continue that conversation. And then wants and needs, give me a minute, such as using a tip card, or give me 3 choices to answer your question. So we're going to give you more ideas on these communication purposes as we go.
Well, just a quick information. Michael Williams, who's an AAC user, recalls, I know how painful it is when people stare at you and think that you're somebody other than who you really are because of how you look on the outside. Believe me, this won't change unless you have a way to tell someone who you are on the inside.
Right. So with social closeness, we're really starting to increase the child's independence with regulating communication within a relationship, and that's just a key example, is helping people understand the level. All right, now we're going to take a look at the framework of the AAC competencies, and I love this framework. It helps you write your IEPs. It helps you guide your process, and who doesn't like that? It helps you explain to parents and all the team members how to wrap their minds around AAC. So you're looking at the linguistic skills, which is academic and social language at this point. The operational skills, that technical skill to control volume or repair a message or maybe even programming. Socially, that combination again of unaided and aided communication. We're going to talk in a little bit how to put a communication wallet together for quick social greetings and closures and getting information across, so I'm looking forward to telling you about that. And then strategically, enlisting and utilizing support to get communication and belongings ready and going. So if you think about it, when we're talking about our IEPs, how often do we write in our service plan and just enough time to maybe target the linguistic goals, but not necessarily all the other areas, the operational, the social, and strategic. I think we've probably gotten better, especially in the last few years, to target the social and strategic, those pragmatic forms. I think we're much better at that now. But how about that operational? Have you really built in enough time for you to actually make the AAC tools functional and operational for you, and then time for the child to use that? So I just would offer that you build that into the IEP to say, hey, yes, I work on my linguistic goals, and it's going to take me an hour, but it's going to take me another hour.
That's right.
Or more, maybe 3, to actually get this, all the AAC tools up and functioning. So just help yourself, and this is a great way to have a research-based argument to say, this is why I need to do what I need to do to support this child's needs for communication. Now, another slide to take a look at these competencies, just some in areas to target for the bridging skills stage. Linguistically, we're starting to ask questions. Definitely want to build in that negation for the child to be able to talk about what they do or don't want to do, or do or don't like, and then some of the word endings. In addition, socially, we're looking at body and space. How can they use their body, essentially, for communication and monitoring how they're using their body. Expressing an opinion, and engaging in discussions. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then operational, teaching speech-generating device, which is the SGD. If you hear that later, that's what we're talking about, speech-generating devices, tools, spelling, programming words, that sort of thing. And strategically, again, using aided and unaided ways to express, help, and to repair messages.
The scope of bridging skills includes making bridges in communication. What are the goals of each member of the child's team? The parents, the teachers, the administrators, the friends, community helpers? How will they know the child's meeting those goals? In the process, some problem walls may have to come down, and we want to have the child have as few restrictions as possible as to what to say. True independence involves self-determination, according to Linda Burkhart and Gail Porter at the International Society of Augmentative Alternative Communication pre-conference in Pittsburgh in the summer of 2012. True independence means saying what you want to say to whomever, wherever, whenever you want to say it in a manner you prefer to express your individual person. For typical children, they have 36,000 hours to say whatever they want to say. Well, for children who use AAC only with a speech-language pathologist, say twice a week for 20 to 30 minutes, it takes 701 years to have the same experience. So we need to shorten that time by having all the communication partners make communication happen. Parents on real issues, educators on what fits into the school day, peers on everyday topics. Autonomy is critical and overrides everything else. Bridging is moving toward autonomy. Make sure the AAC tools and access are available for intelligibility, specific, efficient, and independent use, and as socially valued as a manner as possible. These are good clues for our scope. Let's review the 7 categories we use to promote AAC. These are the same as in getting started in building fundamentals and making connections. Some of you will recognize that. They're basic, yet increasingly important. First is the social interaction. We're primarily social human beings. We want to build on that. We look at the first skills and activities that promote that interaction with others, children and adults. What's motivating? What shows respect for the child's choices? What are the child's interests? Just deciding on a couple of facilitator strategies makes the next steps easier for the person using AAC. We want to bridge the person using AAC to using more complex tools to meet those varied communication requirements.
So, it's just too bad we don't like to have any fun. So we had a great time putting some of these photos together that you'll be seeing in this webinar. And as we all know, telephone skills have their own unique set of rules. You don't really get the benefit of the nonverbals, and even with Skype there might be a delay, which always throws in a tricky little, sometimes there's a delay. You could lose your connection, or you leave a message and your communication interaction goes from being very social with an informational motive, you obviously want to convey some information, to now transferring information is the dominant goal, and the social you have to sort of find your way through, kind of like I just messed up that little section. I need my information to get across, but you have to say it in a somewhat social way because I don't get the benefit of the feedback. So that becomes a very interesting skill. I just had an interaction with a boy with fluency who had that, really struggled to leave a message because he was fully expecting to speak to his friend. and his friend wasn't there, and he had to leave a message and just, wow, this changed. Why did it change? Why was it so hard? And we kind of talked through why that became so challenging. So, just so you know, AbleNet has a telephone system called Sero, I believe it's Sero, that has 50 recorded 60-second messages with remote control access, a secure spoken identity that assumes receiver compatibility, and some emergency features as well. So a lot of phone carriers have text-based options for people with communication needs, so it's worth looking into. But regular telephone practice is definitely worth doing. I know parents love it when their kids call and leave a message at home, so you can do that with an AAC device or speech or whatever it is, but it's still a great tool to always focus on. So here you see two children getting along quite well. The child may still need cues, but you're asking those good questions. What do you need to color that next picture? What do you need to ask me to read that next page in a book? We're talking about initiating and engaging in more cycles of conversation. We're combining those unaided and aided forms of communication with greater expectations for independence. And we're looking for more opinions. I like to listen to music. Now, here's that question. What do you like to do? And that can be a real trick because kids may not be used to asking those questions. Topic initiation is important, but I think sometimes it can be a bit overrated. Some of the research is starting to say, you know what we really want? We really want rich conversation. Mm-hmm. And does it have to be an initiation? Well, maybe not, but we certainly want the kids to be participating, to have those continued cycles of interaction, and I think that is great. I think it's a great message so that it's not too much emphasis, well, they have to initiate this conversation or communication, they're not communicating the way they should. Well, yeah, it's important. It's good for them to be able to initiate, but I think it's just as rich if they can continue and know that they're a part of a conversation. So just keep that in mind. Maybe if people are putting pressure on you to just focus on initiation, think, no, we can focus on quality conversation within an established message as well. All right. So we also just want to make sure that if a child gets stuck, for example, I was working with a gentleman yesterday who I said, well, what did you do this weekend? And word finding is a significant issue. Mm-hmm. So we pulled out a dry erase board, and I know enough about the child. I put down 5 or 6 things that were possibilities, and the child circles the choice and then was able to generate the message from there. So again, using any modality that you have, and again, I'll show you how we did that using a communication wallet in a bit. Also within the stage, we're also working on facilitators reducing the amount of prompts that the child is given or is required to complete an activity. And that can be tricky when you're working on bridging skills where facilitator is used to giving so many prompts and cues, and you almost need to write a goal for yourself. If you're used to giving verbal cues or a verbal reinforcer, can you take that back to a nonverbal cue and then have your own stages and levels of cueing set up so that the child can take on more of that responsibility? And it's tricky because we always want to help, but trying to do that, and you'll catch yourself and you'll, oh, I wasn't supposed to do or I wasn't supposed to point. I was just supposed to give maybe a physical tactile cue or something like that. So anyway, do the best you can at this stage to figure out how you can reduce prompts and for the child and yourself. But at the same time, the joy in the kids' faces when they're at the stage, realizing that they are making this communication happen is amazing. They know they're bridging over into a means of communication that maybe they didn't think was possible. Maybe you didn't think it was possible, but you tried and they tried, and it's happening. So I think it's very great, especially kind of like those aha moments you have in literacy when you see success and it's just dynamic and electric. So now let's look a little bit more at social skills in a little different way. I decided I wanted to show you a little bit about group dynamics just because while we work on pragmatics quite a bit, it's really not a whole lot different from how we organize our human organizational behavior is put together. So I was looking at different researchers of people I wanted to use, and I love the names of Tuckman's stages of group dynamics. You're forming, norming, storming, performing, and adjourning. I thought, how great is that for kids to latch onto? So with joining in, for our kids, it could be figuring out what setting works. And it could be literally just, can you exist in this setting? For example, I have a child that being in the classroom is tough. It's just hard for him to be in a classroom. I'm talking about a typical general ed classroom. It's a classroom. Prefers to work independently in one environment. He really wants to be in the classroom. This is not a want-based issue. It's just a sensory-based issue. And so now he will go in to this classroom and tries, and he does a great job. So that was step one, is can we form an environment that works? Okay, 2, norming. What are the roles now? Okay, now I'm here. I can handle it. What is the dynamic between my friends who are in this classroom who want to talk to me and I want to talk to them? How is that going to play out? Okay, so that's step 2. Then the leader influence. Am I going to be the leader? Is somebody else going to be the leader? Where will I be in that? Am I going to be, in the last session we talked about inclusion. Am I going to be the influential leader? Am I going to be actively involved? Or am I just sort of going to be a part of what's going on? So you figure out your role in that. And then stage 4, the functioning of the group, the problem solving. Practicing. This is where a lot of our work, kind of where we step in oftentimes and maybe not think about the first few. So we're practicing given chaos that is childhood interaction and communication. And then we're looking at closures that are age-appropriate language and gestures and eye contact. So we just want to think about ways that we can help children regulate their behavior. And as Dr. Rogers stated when we were preparing this webinar, she said, it's better than the dump and hope strategy of social interaction. Let's just throw them in and see how it goes. So maybe just think about that as you're going through to see what works. All right, so now we're going to take a look at a communication wall. This is just another way to help kids have a quick way to interact that's socially appropriate. I think this works for your later elementary, maybe younger elementary children as well. And one reason I really love it, besides that it's quick, is it doesn't run out of batteries. It's always good. I'm going to show you what I put into a wallet, and Sharon and I have been kicking around the idea of doing some research with communication wallets, with complex communication needs. For now, I'll just show you what we've put together. Here is a picture of quick social greetings, the hi, how are you? And last time, in the last webinar, we talked about how this may or may not be relevant. If the child can verbalize these messages, then maybe you don't need to have this in your communication wallet. Other things like hi and bye or yes or no, if they're intelligible enough, and my rule is if an unknown communication partner understands the child, then you don't need to include it in the wallet because they can verbalize it. However, if the child requires it from a pragmatic perspective, you might want to keep it in from that I need to use this to help me follow the pattern. So, for example, a child with autism who may be perfectly verbal but requires this structure, you might want to keep it in. So those are just some guides on whether you would or wouldn't include some social greetings. Here's an image that has 2 pages with the statements, I need a break and I'm ready. These pages allow a child to self-regulate with an activity or transition between activities. I often have a child's wallet nearby even when I'm working on a speech-generating device in order to know when a child needs a break. They can also use their speech-generating device, but this provides another mode and teaches the child that they can communicate in more than one way. And so if they feel like I'm working on my speech-generating device, I can step away and I can use my wallet. So, or if I want to do a quick confirmation of yes, no, I can have the page turn to yes, no in the communication wallet and have that as an option. Here is an example of a wallet for a person that does not rely on icons to understand or express messages. This makes it really quick and easy for a person or for the staff to insert a page that's pertinent for the day or that is a brand new page that will be ongoing, which often is the case. So you can see on the top of the I need a break message on the left side that there's a dark tab. For this child, it's helpful to have this tab so he can get to this page quickly. And you can see on the right-hand side the temperature gauge that he can help use so that we can understand where he's at. And there are lots of different temperatures that you can use and have more than just a 4 smiley face or not smiley face scale. But for this child, this absolutely works. And that's the great part of the wallet. You do what works. Here are some section ideas for you to consider. The personal information is pertinent, but you may not want to include somebody's address. You may want the school address or a clinic address in case the wallet is lost and needs to be returned. The best ways to communicate with me, I think, is really important for unfamiliar communication partners, and even for, in the classroom or meeting new friends. I'll show you in the next slide an example of it. So I told you about that. Okay. Next page. Here's an example of the strategic and social page. And just a note on operation, I have a little guy whose Velcro is too strong. So if you're picking out a wallet, check how sturdy or how well the Velcro works, and will that work with the fine motor skills of the person that you're working with. And in this one particular wallet that I use is too hard, and for a while I thought, okay, well he also has OT, so let's continue to work on that. But you know what? It's not working. It's not a good way to go because he needs to get to his communication. And if it's too physically hard, then I'm halting the very thing I'm trying to encourage, which is communication. So I recommend that you gauge the Velcro of the wallet. All right. Some more sections to consider. Social greetings, which we talked about before. You can make those certainly relevant. Requesting assistance and self-regulation, which I showed you before. You can have colored in sections with ranges of 1 to 4, 1 to 10, whatever's appropriate. And using the words also that the child understands. That's the other important thing. I think we often have language that we use, but does the child understand the words? So it might be beneficial to come up with words that obviously work for the kid. And then relaxation tips that might work for me and just have them. And some of these areas would be pertinent for some and not for others, so decide what really works. This is just what we've done so far that's been successful. Some other ideas include emergency contact information. Again, you can decide what's most relevant or what information you do or don't want to have out. Important photo identification, so maybe obviously if we're talking young children, we wouldn't have a driver's license, but but maybe a school identification card. And I often bring up identification cards for kids that are state issued, and usually I get a big sigh, like, yeah, we should, but I don't know that I want to handle the DMV. So, but it is a good idea. And then other documents that you can include are the daily schedule, maybe the class schedule, campus maps, bus schedules, depending on where the child is at, just some other ideas. Basically, think communication. What other community access is your child engaged in, and are there schedules or things that can be included in the wallet that might be helpful? And then here is a written schedule, but it can also just be a statement card. So say the child is in speech class and he's going to be heading to the office. Then you can turn to this page and the child can point or verbalize and point to where they are going. So it's a nice way to help a child regulate, know where they're going, indicate to you where they're going so you get the solid communication, and helps with transitions as well. And then just some considerations. If you get too many sections going, you can color code them. I try to keep it down to no more than 2 sort of insert sections. Otherwise, if you get too much, you might as well head back into your speech generating device. So think about what is the most pertinent for social communication and what is the most relevant. And this can change, too. So if a child starts to emerge with a really functional yes-no or really functional social greeting that isn't required anymore, then take it out and add something more pertinent or just reduce the amount of information that's in it. Each user's wallet will be a little bit different, and again, just use the ideas to help you. And a source for the little wallet inserts is through Miles Kimball. That's just where I get mine, so I thought I'd pass on a resource if you're trying to figure out where to find the little wallet inserts. And there you go. You can be off and running with a communication wallet. I think it's good for many different ages and stages. All right, and here we are now with bridging skills, communication skills, and activities. I had to come up with a really good idea as to why I chose this picture, other than it's obviously really completely adorable. So what we see is an engaged fellows here in a daily routine with an obviously established level of understanding, requiring careful negotiation. Make sure you don't get clawed or bitten. I love the cat's front and back paws, and the smile on the face is just priceless. So can you imagine going home, guess what I did today? Here are some examples of activities to do at the bridging skills stage. You can use recorded forms and media to generate opinions on likes and dislikes, humor and drama. Here is, this picture is of a video, or actually, I'm not supposed to say video, they're now DVDs, of Osmosis Jones. It's a movie that kids can use to learn about how the body manages illness and what happens if you have a poor lifestyle and choices. It stars Bill Murray and Chris Rock, and Chris Rock is the guy on the inside trying to help the body repair itself. And anyway, it's a funny little video to help kids understand how the body works, so it's neat. Other ideas are playing with peers with consistent opportunities surrounding repetitive activities that allow the turn-taking, commenting, and most importantly, that fun. And then making the most of community outings, the card games, the puzzles, the board games, electronic games. It's kind of things that we do all the time that kids can be a part of. And if you're ever short on what language should I use, think about the language that you are using. And does the child have access to those comments that you just made, to those expressions you just made, to those utterances of joy or frustration that you just, well, maybe not all the frustration, but some of the frustration that you just made. And here we are at bridging skills.
Yeah, this is some of the frustration days, that's for sure. And anybody can have a bad hair day. Children who use AAC may have such a day when everything seems to be flying apart. But don't be surprised, but know that it happens to all of us. Like this kiddo, just smile and try again. As in conflict resolution, facilitators define the goal with the child. Is it for the child to share information, to interact socially? Going off in every direction leaves us vulnerable. So facilitators gather information so they can identify some alternatives, and after looking at some of the possible consequences, the facilitator decides on one solution and figures out what the support the child still needs. Is it a physical touch to get started, or would a few words of encouragement do the trick, or would modeling help? What kind of action would lead to more independence? Figure out and ask others to help monitor the solution for your success. A few suggestions include, 1, ask the child, as the child begins to spell individual words, his or her partner can repeat the word and keep track of the words in those longer messages. Or the facilitator could hear the child's keywords and reword the message using full-spoken English. Or, as Burkhart and Porter suggest, the facilitator can move the child to independent communication by cuing or coaching the child. For example, another child may say it's his birthday, and the facilitator could suggest, would you like to ask how old are you, or what presents did you get, or how are you going to celebrate? That way the child can make the choice that is bridging to independence. In bridging skills, we look for increased opportunities for true interaction and participation, going to order at a restaurant, talking to clerks in the department store. Co-construction of messages is seen across cultures. Bakhtin, Russian philosopher of language, writes that everything we say is 50% someone else's. Our communication partner puts his or her understanding of our words, gestures, vocalizations with the words that he knows and uses. That's true for AAC users and his and her communication partners. Co-construction of messages means we do a kind of dance in which each participate and respond to the other person. In bridging children who use AAC, they need to become more skilled dancers as they respond to the specifics of what their partners are saying. Their responses increasingly must be culturally appropriate so that they are socially valued. That means using and fostering language that's appropriate, reading together, exploring ways to use those unique words academically, socially. As the AAC user needs to how to use his or her AAC actively, the words will need to express that new knowledge and judgment. Facilitator strategies are less about the mechanics of AAC and more about the way to express meaning. Social networks ask key questions about all the different types of communication partners a child or an adult would come in contact with. The package comes with an outstanding 25-minute video explaining the theory, the use, and the success of the tools. We just love it. You also consider how the child will communicate using his or her body, an AAC device, or both, and how is the technology accessed, and how effective is the child's communication. What types of communication does the child want to talk about? It's a treasure of an assessment tool. Should we do a review of social networks here, encouraging adults to make sure the child is exposed to all 5 circles of friends? The adults can check to be sure that they're considering all cycles and check what language is needed if all social opportunities are being met. Now we head into bridging skills. With literacy. Last week we introduced the idea that you want to expose a child to literacy in 2 ways. First way is exposing the child to literacy at the child's interest level, and the second way is to expose the child to literacy at the child's reading level. Today we add more decoding words, but also telling stories. Literacy development involves bridging skills and a stronger measure of decoding words and letters, sounding out words. Creating stories, we can use the story grammar marker as shown in the upper right-hand corner of our screen. It's a tactile way to recall the elements of the story. The face on the felt represents the character, the star, the setting, and the foot is what starts it off, the initiating event, with the hand representing the plan the character makes. Authors Moreau and Fidrich suggest that telling a story develops in stages. This is all in the story grammar marker, and it is published through MindWing Concepts. Stage 1, the child uses vocabulary to describe sequence of characters and settings. Here the AAC users would use words to hold the story together, like and then. Second stage, the child looks for action sequence, chronological order, focus on actions. This time the AAC user needs verbs and ordering words of first, next, when, after that. And stage 3, which is all pictured in the literacy developmental checklist, the child understands and can retell the initiating event which causes other reactions. So they look for words like so, and but. In narrative story development, it begins with the child as the main character, say within his or her own community or home as the setting. Let's say the story of going to the park to play involves the action of waiting your turn, swinging high or low, eating a picnic. By stage 4, the foot part, what starts the story off, the initiating event, is we lost the car keys at the park. This involves both knowledge of the event and linguistic skills in creating the sentences. Using and, past tense verbs, pronouns, make this language manageable on a speech-generating device, not for testing, but for clarity of expressions. As a child becomes more expert, he or she can meld his own experience with meaningful information from another story that they have heard. Find ways to manage that vocabulary and grammar to the child's reading level. Takes creativity. One of my most favorable memorable creative experiences I learned from a second language teacher. She was working with middle school students and took the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. That was way too young an interest level for these learners, but at their reading level. She converted the narrative to a central topic of interest to them, then began writing and illustrating. If you give a teenager a car and add, they're going to want to buy gas. If they're going to buy gas, then they'll need a job. What a creative way to tell a story and manage the vocabulary and grammar. Later, narrative development will require perspective taking, as like in social stories, that step outside the child's own experience to see events from another perspective. Create Stories expands a child's imagination and relationships as they work together with others to formulate ideas and see consequences. Guiding AAC users in telling narratives enhances their participation in typical conversations as well. They need to be ready. Character, descriptions, setting, events, action sequence. In bridging skills, vocabulary needs to be large and well organized. So we need to include the child's choices. The big question in bridging skill is the child supported by access to enough vocabulary to generate his or her own message? The larger the vocabulary pool, the more likely it is that the word I'm thinking will be there. This is one display of one speech-generating device. It has 84 options, 6 rows, 12 columns. The display includes pronouns in yellow, action verbs with ways to modify them in green, turn play into playing, and words, action for singular subjects. Then they have descriptions under the rainbow. This access to lots of vocabulary, always in the same place with conjunctions, the top row by the train, and question words, makes it easier for the kids to access. Judy Montgomery has an entire book on the bridge of vocabulary with a CD of activities to use to name, describe, give antonyms, synonyms, classifications, meaning, and use, all for one word. You could play a game with a diagram to teach receptive language. Say, here's the word champion. Think of antonyms. Loser, came in last, just learning to play. Think of the categories, or the word parts, the compound. And finally, then put it in a story. For example, the mother could not find the ring she took off to put on some lotion. She looked, and she looked everywhere. Olivia, who was using her speech-generating device, had seen that the ring had fallen off the table and was under the chair. Her older brother, Cal, was looking. Even the dog was trying to stay out of the way. No one expected Olivia to hunt from her wheelchair, but Olivia had been watching with her eyes. She found look on her speech-generating device. Then she found the preposition under and the word table, and with a polite please. Look under the table, she said. She repeated it 3 times before someone heard her. Her mother got the ring, came to Olivia and gave her a big hug. You are a champion, her mother said. You are the champion finder. Learning a word by definition may be a start, but showing a picture or using it in a sentence helps it to make sense.
What a fantastic example. Meaning is so important and so motivating. I think this is the stage where we question ourselves, and again, we question the child. Are they ready? And others might say, why are you doing this? But try, and you will be amazed. You need to know when to push and when to back off. I can give you a little runner advice. I've been running for, again, too long. But you set up a series of cycle of hard days, medium days, and easy days. And sometimes you have a great day when you're not expecting it, and you go with it. And if the child is just giving you communication, just go and go and go. And then other days you might say, you know what, today's the day we need to take a different approach. And you try that. So set your mind in that mode that you're going to have push days. And then when you need to, you can back off. But think about those push days. And then even if you fall short, you probably will move farther down the path of communication than you would have if you had never tried it all. So just give it a shot. And consider all these different forms. I think as I wrote this, I thought, ooh, people are going to think we're crazy. But good. Go for it. Consider us crazy and try it. All right, so bridging skills, tools, and access. Here you see a variety of tools that reflect the bridging skills phase. You see AbleNet switches, board maker symbols for communication boards. You see tablet technology, case ideas, high-tech speech-generating devices. And this reflects this great breadth that you're going to have, I think, in bridging and in maximizing that we're going for. We're looking at all modes of communication. But in addition, what's not represented, we want you to consider the academic needs too. So look at some of the Kurzweil, Win, or Solo programs from Don Johnson that address access to reading, writing, such as word prediction, and maybe Dragon Naturally Speaking too, just to make sure you're getting that academic as well as social and interactive communication.
AAC tools and access include these AbleNet products in curriculum development, mathematics to the STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. A new AbleNet Action Dictionary for the iPhone, iPad, iTouch are good for vocabulary building, and it's used in special education. Must mention the preschool curriculum, Play and Learn, a 12-month curriculum that is motivating for literacy activities, communication, and above all, IEP goal writing.
So here are some access and iTech accessories just so that you have them available. AbleNet has some great mounting and iDevice accessories, so definitely check that out. The OtterBox is great protection for iPads and other tools, so that's another resource. And then there's always the good old-fashioned major retailers to see what's out there for trifold stands and that sort of thing, so you can have a whole breadth of options. In addition, for some other physical access and accessories, you can check out the iPad cordless switch. It's from Disabled Online. And another option can be a stylus that if the child may not have the fine motor control, you can use a hand splint or cuff, maybe work with an occupational therapist because they could help you locate those, but it would be an occupational therapy sort of tool. And then as long as the stylus has access to the skin, that's how it can be used. And then R.J. Cooper and Associates also has a number of mounts and devices to help kids with access to communication. At this stage, we're putting emphasis on technology and asking some really good questions. What additional technologies may be added or replaced to support communication, including reading and writing? So this is where you want to check to make sure you're on top of everything. Is there an access method that may improve speed and or precision in messaging and kind of keep up? I get the AbleNet blast, the email blast, and it's so great because I know what's coming out, what's the latest and greatest. So pay attention to those. And then what tools and access methods work across settings, because it could definitely vary for what's most appropriate. So are we using pointing and a communication wallet? Are we using direct select and a speech generating device in a more academic setting or home setting? What works?
Burkhart notes that all people require a paper option to ensure they have a method to communicate at any time in all situations. So the communication wallet comes in handy, as does printing out the display, such as shown on the 84 display that we had in slide 33. A child can get messages to play on the speech-generating device by pressing the picture itself, called direct selecting, with their hands, with their eyes. If they need to have just a limited surface, they can access a switch that's connected to a speech-generating device, and then the switch can move the cursor to get to the message the child wants to say.
There is a new app out, fairly new. It's called Autism Mate, and it has visual scenes with hotspots that you can use real images, video models, visual stories, visual schedulers, content, library. So there's a light version coming out in mid-June, and there's a free trial that demonstrates sampling of the full version. So people seem to be pretty excited about this. We talked about the benefit of using visual stories and visual scenes in our previous webinars, so it might be really worth it to check it out to see if it might work for the kiddos you're working with. And here are the little rascals. They are working through their troubleshooting situation with a certain case, working together to put out fires. So here are some tips for the Bridging Skills stage. Tip or response cards to manage difficult public behavior situations. There's two options here. You can either buy them or there are some free downloads as well, and it helps if a child is having a challenging situation and people can miss understand what's happening. And it might be easier for a child who's more physically impaired, but maybe the disabilities that are not as visual, that you can't necessarily see. I had a dad come in preschooler, of a preschooler, and he was crying, and it's terrible, when awful when parents cry. And because he was told he was a bad dad in a store because his child with autism was acting out, and he was kind of higher on the spectrum, but still. And it was awful. So you can't help with every situation with the tip card, but if it's something that you can hand to somebody to help them understand the situation, then that would be great. Other tips for troubleshooting are to just back up your novel pages. A lot of the devices now are better with self-backing up, and you're not losing quite as many, but it's you still want to make sure you're getting those communication devices backed up. Making copies of communication boards and printing out pages for easier access around town. Some people have said, well, what about using an iTouch instead of a speech-generating device? And I just thought I'd throw in some tips just in case the iTouch might require the user to make more hits before getting to the same place with a one hit on a different device that might be larger or a different type of device. The user might lose her audience spending time trying to scroll through the smaller device and looking at the device rather than peers, so you want to keep that in mind. Some of the mounts are definitely getting better. There used to not be an iTouch belt or anything. I think there actually might be now. But it's also a very easy thing to put down, and then it's just gone. And the iTouch doesn't say, I'm a communication device, don't steal me.
No,
It's just, if it's left around, it's probably going to walk away. And it's about 1/4 the size of an iPad, making the button smaller for activation. So you just need to consider that with visual and fine motor needs. So here we are. We look forward to speaking with you all on June 25th for maximizing participation. We will imagine all of your bright and shining faces since we can't actually see you.
Communication, as you can see, is a key life skill. As Michael Williams, to persons learning AAC, expressed it, have you got anything better to do? Listen to me. There's nothing more important for you to be doing right now than to learn how to express your thoughts and feelings to other people. These prize-winning ribbons indicate who's the winner of Skill, Courage, Sharing, and Joy Awards. Skill in using AAC, courage to move toward autonomy and using AAC across settings, being true to sharing your own information that's unique and user-specific. One of my favorite AAC users wrote that literacy is the key to my voice. So developing literacy allows for the child development to demonstrate their linguistic skill, their operational expertise, their social competence, and healthy strategies that allows them to share who they are. Joy is so often the unexpected when we come to expect now as the child becomes increasingly independent. After this session is over, keep your browser window open and a short survey will appear on your screen. Your opinion matters to AbleNet and to us, so please take a moment to complete the survey. We're eager to learn from your participation. We'll read with interest your comments. AbleNet is proud to offer webinar sessions dedicated to professional development offerings that keep you up to date on emerging assistive technology and curricular solutions. So look for listings and emails or visit the AbleNet University website to see the schedule of upcoming live professional development sessions. And don't forget about the vast library of free recorded, archived webinars. You, the participants, are capable, attainable AAC guides and remarkable communication partners. Thank you for making time for participating in this webinar, Bridging Skills. We welcome your feedback. I invite you to like AbleNet on Facebook and follow AbleNet on Twitter for all the latest, including updates on this development, other products, and promotions. Please don't close your browser quite yet. A short survey will pop up. I ask that you kindly take a moment to complete it. It'll automatically submit when you're done. Thank you.